Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a televised address after the IDF killed 3 Israeli hostages. Netanyahu says that the war will continue and has promised to dismantle Hamas after 3 hostages were killed. Apart from this, Netanyahu has also hinted at new Hamas talks. We will be tracking all of this on World DNA this morning, but first, the headlines. Israeli military says they mistakenly killed 3 of the hostages who were holding white flags. Said the killing is against their rules of engagement and that a high-level probe has been ordered. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hints at renewed hostage talks amid reports of Mossad chief and chief Israeli negotiators' discussions with Qatar. Meanwhile, massive demonstrations take place in Israel demanding hostage release and Netanyahu's resignation. Former U.S. President Donald Trump reiterates controversial stance against immigration. Says undocumented immigrants are poisoning the American blood. Chileans head to the polls Sunday for a second referendum aimed at replacing the country's dictatorship-era constitution. People will now vote on a more conservative policy draft. President Boric earlier said it was his last attempt to reform the constitution. Luton Town's Premier League match abandoned after their captain, Tom Lockyer, suffered a cardiac arrest and collapsed on the pitch. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made comments suggesting that new negotiations were underway to recover hostages held by Hamas. And this comes after Israel's intelligence chief met the Prime Minister of Qatar, the country mediating in the Israel-Gaza war. Now, in a televised press conference day after the Israeli forces mistakenly killed 3 of more than 100 hostages held by Hamas, Netanyahu said that Israel's offensive in Gaza had helped clinch a partial hostage release deal in November and promised to maintain intense military pressure on Hamas.
Ceasefire, remove our troops. They have all kinds of demands. So what do we understand as soon as we give in? Hamas has won. We are obligated to eliminate it and return our hostages, but will not give up either this goal or that goal. We are working with Qatar in Egypt. We have serious criticisms of Qatar, about which I suppose you will hear in due course. But right now, we are trying to completely recover all of our hostages.
According to media reports, Israel's Mossad spy agency director David Barnea met with Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani on Friday night in Europe. Well, they met to discuss resuming negotiations to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Qatari mediators contacted the Israeli officials last weekend to see whether there was any kind of interest in relaunching indirect talks with Hamas over a new deal. Sources say that such a deal could include humanitarian elements, such as the release of elderly men and those with serious medical conditions. Not only this, also the release of hostages who are seriously wounded. Israel is coming under increasing pressure from its allies over its war in Gaza. UK Foreign Minister David Cameron and German counterpart Annalena Baerbock said that the need is urgent for a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza.
The President will travel to New Delhi, India to attend the G20 Leaders Summit. On Thursday, the president will travel to New Delhi, India to attend the G20 Leaders Summit. On Thursday, the president will travel to New Delhi, India to attend the G20 Leaders Summit. On Thursday, the president will travel to New Delhi, India to attend the G20 Leaders Summit. On Thursday,
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan too met with Barnier in Tel Aviv for 2 hours and discussed the efforts to resume talks on the release of hostages this week.
Thursday, the president will travel to New Delhi, India to attend the G20 Leaders Summit.
And mounting anger at the Israeli government have spilled onto the streets of Tel Aviv. This comes after the Israeli Defense Forces mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza, misidentifying them as threats. And this has triggered massive demonstrations against Netanyahu for not doing enough to free captives held by Hamas. The hostages were believed to be either abandoned or escaped Hamas captivity. Well, all the hostages have now been identified as males, and they were in their mid and late 20s. The Israeli Defense Forces have revealed that the hostages emerged shirtless and were holding a white flag to signify surrender. Demonstrations started on Friday night outside the country's military headquarters. They held signs which had images of the hostages' faces and messages such as "Get them out of hell." The demonstrators lambasted Netanyahu for his inaction on securing a new prisoner exchange deal. Take a listen.
My reaction, first of all, was grief. These are families that I know personally and people that have been waiting so hopefully for their loved ones to return. And to me, it struck me in the heart, showing me that there's got to be a deal right now to bring them back, and that we have to do more things to help these people get out of this prison.
Well, this incident occurred while U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was visiting the region. Moreover, U.S. President Joe Biden has also labeled Israel's bombing of Gaza indiscriminate. Well, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby called the hostages' deaths heartbreaking. However, he cautioned against making broader judgments about Israel's ability to conduct its campaign. And we're still on with our continuous coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. In the latest, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to keep up the military pressure on Hamas, despite appeals from relatives of the hostages held in Gaza for a return to negotiations after friendly fire killed 3 captives. Take a listen.
We are in a war for our existence, in which we must continue until victory. Despite the international pressure and despite the unbearable cost that the war is exacting from us in our fallen sons and daughters.
The Israeli army revealed that the 3 hostages were carrying a white flag and cried for help in Hebrew. That is, when they were mistakenly fired on by the Israeli troops. The news of the killings sparked demonstrations in Israel, with the relatives of the remaining hostages expressing concern that their loved ones could be next. A funeral was later held for the hostages mistakenly killed by the Israeli army. Meanwhile, the Israeli army said that it had discovered weapons and arrested around 80 Hamas members in military captivity at a hospital in Gaza. Hamas has described it as a horrific massacre. The Israeli tanks and forces withdrew from a hospital in northern Gaza, leaving behind chaotic scenes as distressed civilians who say that they have nowhere to go. They were searching for bodies under the rubble. On the other hand, the armed wing of the Palestinian militant group Hamas released a video that it said shows the Al-Qassam Brigade fighters attacking on the Israeli forces and the base in Juhur al-Dik in the Gaza Strip. According to a statement released with the video, Hamas said that it killed an Israeli soldier in the base and seized his M16 weapon. In the West Bank, 3 Palestinians, including a teenager, were killed by the Israeli gunfire in different incidents, which also took place on Saturday. And this is according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin departed on a multi-day trip to West Asia. Austin will be joined by the top U.S. General Charles Q. Brown for meetings in Israel in the coming few days. In other global news, the Catholic Church's most senior official to ever stand a criminal trial, Angelo Becciu, has been convicted of embezzlement and fraud. A Vatican court has imprisoned the former cardinal to 5.5 years in jail, although it remains doubtful and unclear if Becciu, who resides at the Vatican currently, will see the inside of a prison anytime soon. Our next report tells you more. Take a look.
Cardinal Angelo Becciu, the most senior Catholic Church official ever to stand trial before a Vatican criminal court, was convicted on Saturday of embezzlement and sentenced to 5.5 years in jail. The trial exposed infighting and intrigue in the highest echelons of the Vatican and revolved mostly around a murky Vatican investment in a Tony London property. The court said Becciu had been irresponsible and, quote, highly speculative to invest more than $200 million in a fund connected to the building about 10 years ago. The Vatican sold the building last year, taking an estimated loss of about 140 million euros or $150 million. Becciu's lawyer said he would appeal the decision.
Yes, a conviction came. We will read the grounds. We believe that the trial has proven the Cardinal's absolute innocence, an innocence in which we believe, and I repeat, that we believe has been proven in the course of the hearing.
9 other officials also faced charges in a case that stretched over 2.5 years with 86 courtroom hearings. Only one was acquitted of all counts. Becciu, who was stripped of his title by Pope Francis in 2020, was also accused of funneling money and contracts to companies or charities controlled by his brothers on their native island of Sardinia. Another accusation involved his hiring of a woman who described herself as a security analyst, also from Sardinia, as part of a secret project to help win freedom for a nun who had been kidnapped in Mali. Becciu and the woman were both found guilty of aggravated fraud related to the transfer of money. Becciu, who lives in the Vatican, was expected to remain free for now.
And the ruling Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah, passed away at the age of 86 after being in power for 3 years. According to the reports, Sheikh Nawaf was hospitalized in November but was later declared to be in a stable condition. Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah ascended to the role of Crown Prince in 2006, appointed by his half-brother Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah. He assumed the position of Emir upon Sheikh Sabah's death in September 2020 at the age of 91. Sheikh Nawaf's rule was shadowed by repeated political disputes in Kuwait. Sheikh Nawaf also faced the challenge of navigating the oil-rich country's economy through a crisis triggered by dip in oil prices. And this is after the demise of ruling Emir Sheikh Mesha Ahmad Al-Jaber. Al-Sabah has been named as the new Emir of Kuwait by the country's Ministers' Council. Kuwait's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of State for Cabinet Affairs, Isa Al-Kandari, made the announcement of the nation's new successor. Take a listen.
وعملا بأحكام الدستور والمادة الرابعة من القانون رقم 4 لسنة 64 في شأن أحكام توارث الإمارة، فإن مجلس الوزراء ينادي بولي عهده حضرة صاحب السمو الشيخ مشعل الأحمد الجابر الصباح أميرا لدولة الكويت، مبتهلين إلى المولى جلت قدرته أن يكلأ سموه بكريم عنايته.
Meanwhile, the Indian government has announced one day of state mourning on December 17th as homage to Kuwait's ruling Emir Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmad. The government's press release says that the national flag to be flown at half-mast, an official entertainment on the day as well. Now imagine you have all the resources in the world, including abundance of money. What will you do? Well, some might buy luxurious items, properties and so on. But guess what? What is the world's 7th richest man doing with the money he owns? Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, has started to prepare for the doomsday. Yes, the Facebook founder is creating a compound which also features a doomsday bunker. He is creating this compound in Hawaii. The compound is located on the Hawaiian island of Kuwait. Conservative estimates put the total price of the compound at $100 million, which comprises underground bunkers, luxurious mansions, and other self-reliant features. The massive $1 million project will have its own sources of food and energy. The secret project, which the Meta chief is apparently hiding from the public, is called Kulau Ranch. The project, which revealed that ranch, is one of the most expensive personal construction projects in modern history. And it is under construction and consists of dozens of buildings, which includes 2 main mansions, which will be connected through a tunnel. The tunnel will lead to an underground shelter, which will have an emergency exit. The shelter will be blast resistant as well. The compound will consist of 30 bedrooms and similar number of bathrooms. Apart from this, it will also have a cluster of 11 disc-shaped tree houses. Not only this, the compound will have various security features with secret doors and much more advanced technology. It seems like the ranch is not only retreat, but more like a potential survival base for Zuckerberg and his family in the wake of a global catastrophe. Zuckerberg he's not the only billionaire who has invested in some type of doomsday-proof property. Well, several billionaires and tech titans have built bunkers or safe houses that might provide them safety from hypothetical scenarios where there is a collapse of civilization in the future. In other global news, now, with changing times, more and more women are choosing not to be mothers. Over the past decade, women are either postponing motherhood or are not at all planning to give birth. And this is the situation all over the world. Women are plagued with different problems and are choosing the path of not being mothers. For instance, working women in Italy are caught with different challenges such as lack of employment, less childcare facilities, and there's some of the reasons which are holding them back. Well, the country is home to the lowest female employment rate in the European Union and also has a steep gender pay gap. Finding a permanent job in Italy is tough for women, so they have to settle for temporary jobs, which affects their lifestyles and also their young, especially the young working mothers. According to reports, in 2022, 62% women aged between 30 to 39 are having their first child. And those aged between 20 to 29, they account for 26% of births. When compared with the obstacle women are facing is not being able to juggle between work and taking care of a child. According to official numbers, in 2021, 72% of women resigned from their jobs, saying that they face difficulties associated with jobs and childcare duties. Well, Italy is not the only nation facing this issue. South Koreans are also against the idea of childbearing or even marriage for that matter. South Korea is the country with the lowest birth rate, and the birth rate is expected to fall even further in the next 2 years. The fertility rate fell this year to 0.72 in South Korea and is predicted to drop further to 0.65 in 2025. The country recorded more deaths than births for the first time in 2020. Even in the US, a growing number of millennial and Gen Z women are choosing against parenthood. According to a research, the reason behind women choosing not to be mothers is associated with medical and financial concerns in the United States of America. Other reasons include the changing social atmosphere. More and more women are choosing to follow their careers rather than getting married. And despite the myths of biological clock ticking, many women no longer buy the idea of having a child at a certain age. The burden of motherhood still falls on women, and the wage gap also plays an important role here. And also the factor of managing both job and childcare duties. It is one of the main reasons for women not to choose parenthood. Now, despite the possible stress that this decision-making entails, women are growing more self-aware in their decision to plan this process as and when they feel they are ready. Well, Tesla's Elon Musk weighs in on the recent fossil fuel transition accord signed at the COP28 climate summit. While nearly 200 countries agreed on reducing global fossil fuel consumption, Musk takes a different stance, urging caution and advocating against oil and gas. Here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
We should demonize oil and gas. I think we should say, look, that is obviously necessary in the short term and the medium term too, and it'll take several decades to become sustainable. So I think if we just, without have a sustainable energy future gradually, then that's what will happen.
He also emphasized that the climate change alarm might be exaggerated in the short term. This viewpoint emerges amid heightened global attention on transitioning away from fossil fuels as agreed upon at COP28. Musk's comments were delivered during an appearance at the Arteju Festival in Rome, organized by the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's right-wing Brothers of Italy party. His perspective not only challenges the prevailing narrative on fossil fuel transition, but also sparks a broader conversation on the delicate balance between environmental concerns and practical energy realities in the medium term.
Go humans! Go!
Over to football now. Michael's late penalty saw Crystal Palace complete a surprise comeback at the Etihad to hold defending champions Manchester City to a 2-2 draw. While Manchester City made 9 changes from the side that defeated Red Star Belgrade on Wednesday, with qualification for the Champions League knockout stages already secured. Pep Guardiola had picked a... And with that, we call it a wrap. Thanks very much for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.